FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is 11/19/19, which sounds like it should be a significant number. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't. You know, we're already 10 years since the last financial crisis. Generally, there's a 10-year cycle. Something is going to happen. In 2019, it's been pretty calm so far. Stock market's at record levels, but just because it's happened before doesn't mean it's going to continue happening into the indefinite future. Although if you heard my most recent interview with the well-known, the renowned Martin Armstrong, he believes the stock market's still heading into the 30,000s, could go exponential from there. I'm not sure. But one thing I do know, he had an article in his blog, and he said what is holding China back from becoming the dominant economic power on the planet is its complete lack of rule of law. And that's what's kept the U.S. where it was. But the rule of law has greatly diminished its strength. It's been undermined by the deep state and by the political parties. Well, you got to get used to it. Civil unrest is breaking out across the globe. Honestly, I can't keep track of it all. John Rubino, you're having trouble keeping track of it. What country is going to blow up next, John?
Hey, Gary. Well, I post a links list in a breaking news section on dollarclass.com. And one of the topic sections on that list is war, creeping fascism, civil unrest. And, with a links list like that, you kind of can tell what's hot because the headlines cluster on a given subject when you're looking for them and putting them in a list like that. And right now, civil unrest is huge in the world based on the stuff I'm ending up posting. You know, I'm looking at yesterday's list right now, and it's got Hong Kong, Lebanon, Iran, yellow vests in France, Chile, China, and Baghdad. And Mexico, all on that list. And that's
Mexico?
where the civil unrest.
I didn't hear about Mexico. There's unrest going on there. I had no idea.
Well, Mexico, their form of civil unrest is the cartel wars, where whole convoys of Americans are just being shot up down there, and Trump is offering to send soldiers down to take care of the
we need another
cartels.
War. We don't have enough wars. We could use another war, right?
Sure, why not? But. So the question becomes, why all of a sudden is this happening? You know, why are people taking to the streets in all these different countries for apparently different reasons? And I suspect that there's, a single underlying reason in all of these cases, and that is economic inequality, where these people look around, whatever country it is, you look around and you see that your upward mobility has just vaporized. You're actually regressing. Meanwhile, there's a tiny elite who are siphoning off all the wealth and doing great. And they seem to be immune to any problems that are going on in the world. And they don't seem to be subject to the laws that you're subject to. And so you protest, and that protest turns into something more serious. And then we've got civil unrest. And that's happening everywhere. And the reason that the world is that way is basically financial mismanagement via extremely easy money, because every country out there just about has too much debt, and they're responding to it with lower interest rates and more money creation and bigger government deficits. Those policies serve to enrich the already rich, because when you print a lot of new dollars or rupees or yen or whatever, and you send it out into the economy, it flows into financial asset prices normally. In other words, you create a lot of new currency, it makes stocks go up, and it makes real estate go up, and bonds. And those are the things that the already rich people own most of. So they get richer and richer. So it actually makes the problem worse. In other words, if you cut interest rates thinking that you're going to make the 99% happy, get them out of the streets and back to work, what you actually do is make them even madder because they now earn less on their savings while the rich are raking in massive capital gains and becoming even more impervious to the rule of law. And that's our problem right now because the world's governments only have easy money. That's basically their only tool for managing economic stress. But that tool now actually makes the problem worse. So it's based on that analysis, at least, it's highly likely that the whole civil unrest thing becomes a bigger story rather than a smaller story going forward. Because, and one other way you know that that's true, that there's an underlying problem that isn't the immediate problem that brings people out normally, is that once a government caves and promises to take care of whatever it was that brought the people into the streets in the first place, the people don't leave the streets. They stay out there. The protests continue. Because they really weren't about that one thing. They were just about general financial and political frustration. So once they're out there, they don't leave. Hong Kong, perfect example of this. There was originally a law that involved extradition rights from Hong Kong to China that the people in Hong Kong didn't like at all because it gave the Chinese Communist Party too much power over them. So they protested. Hong Kong repealed that law. And the Hong Kong protesters are still out there. It's getting worse. They're shooting arrows at the police. And now the police are shooting tear gas back at them and rounding them up. And so we have a potential Tiananmen Square building in Hong Kong, even though the original reason for the protests no longer exists. And it's the same in a lot of other places. They raise fuel prices and people take to the streets and then they roll back fuel prices right. And people stay out there, and that implies that there's something deeper going on. And I would say that deeper problem is not fixable with today's tools. And that's a huge problem, and the next question is, well, can it happen here? And can something like that happen in the US? And the answer is maybe, because a lot of people already feel like we're in that kind of a situation where there's no more upward mobility. Your life is getting harder and harder. Meanwhile, we got the 1% who own all the stocks and bonds. And, Bill Gates just became the richest man in the world by leapfrogging Jeff Bezos, and they each have 80-some billion dollars, and Warren Buffett this, and, it goes on. And that's deeply frustrating. So after this next election, whoever loses is going to feel cheated, right? And it's going to feel like their life is only going to get worse under this new crazy regime that's in power. And so that could easily light the fuse. So we could see stuff like that. We already have Antifa versus the alt-right a lot of the time out there, and Occupy Wall Street and stuff. So we have, minor versions of the civil unrest that's going on in the rest of the world. But it could be more serious next time around unless we fix the underlying problem, which is massive inequality and a gap that's widening instead of narrowing. But there doesn't seem to be a way to do that because the political candidates are addressing that problem with what they think will work, but of course it won't. I mean, we could elect Bernie Sanders and go socialist, which is directly aimed at helping the people who have been bypassed by this economy. But the implementation of it would be with all borrowed money and with lower interest rates, which don't help with income inequality.
No, they don't.
Yeah, and if we leave Trump in office, then we get what we have now, which obviously isn't a narrowing of the gap between rich and poor. So yeah, we have that potential out there. And if we look around the world and see what's happening in Argentina or Venezuela or Hong Kong or Lebanon or Ecuador, we might be seeing a vision of our future. And even Germany. The thing that made me write the post I just did on titled "Civil Unrest is the New Normal" out there was that I saw a story on Germany whose farmers are now blocking major highways over environmental laws that are hurting them. So even Germany is not immune to this stuff. So, Chile in Latin America seemed like they were immune, and now they're in a state of emergency.
Seemed like the one, a stable country, Chile, had the highest standard of living, their retirement system second to none. But you know what it is? I think the globalization, the attitude of countries just saying, hey, we don't like those dirty industries anyway. Let's let them pollute China. We don't need to be polluted here, and just shipping them off wholesale, and then expecting that all these people who are no longer employed or have to travel long distances to places like from the countryside into Paris because their factory jobs are gone. And then they put on a carbon tax on gasoline, which then penalizes those very people who are now working at service jobs in Paris for less money. And it's a prescription for disaster. Look at Iran. What set off the latest round of rioting there had nothing to do with religion or the Ayatollahs, whatever. It was because they increased the gas tax or cut the gasoline subsidy. And then all of a sudden people get to a tipping point, John, and they just go for it. You know, it's like our good friend Gerald Celente says, when people lose everything, they lose it. And that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah. So in Iran, using that as an example, let's say the government caves and institutes the fuel subsidy. They have to borrow a bunch of money in order to cover the cost of that, right? And then their central bank has to create a lot of new currency in order to cover that debt. So we're right back in the easy money thing, disadvantaging the 99% and helping the 1%. So they don't really have a way out of stuff like that, right? Because they can try raising taxes massively on the 1%, but that doesn't work for two reasons. One is that that's their people. You know, they are the 1%, the guys raising the taxes. So they're kind of poisoning things with the people who keep them in power. And the second is that there's a point beyond which you can't get more money from rich people because the rich people just hire some smart finance guys to hide their money. You know, there's a limit to how much you can take. And that's the thing that in the end makes socialism impossible, because you quickly run out of the money that you thought was there. You know, oh, we'll raise taxes on the rich people by just 5%. Well, all of a sudden, incomes at that level drop by 20%, reported income. And so that 5% increase in taxes actually yields you negative 15% or whatever, you know, and then you have to go after the middle class or else abandon your programs. And then you're a police state. You know, that's how socialism evolves. And because of that, there's no solution. So this is a very scary situation that we've put ourselves in.
Hey, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this so-called impeachment farce that's taking place now in the United States, which has become like a complete joke here, John. I mean,
I know it's
farce. It's pure farce.
You know, it used to be that the best thing the Democrats had going for them was the stupidity of Republicans. But now that has reversed. I'm thinking of the impeachment of Bill Clinton. You know, all the Democrats had to do was just sit back and shake their heads, and they got more popular. Well, now we've got the roles being reversed, where the best thing the Republicans have going for them is the idiotic stuff that the Democrats are doing right now, because they desperately want to get Trump. Okay. Yes. They were always going to impeach him, and they were hoping that the Mueller report would be the thing that would allow them to do that, because that was at least dealing with serious issues. Oh, was he a Russian asset? You know, if the Mueller report had showed that he was, that would have been prime. You know, they could have definitely impeached him over that. They don't have that because that turned out to be fake news. And so they had to fall back on this Ukraine thing, which is just so sad as a scandal on so many levels, because first of all, even if you watch the hearings, you still don't know what happened or what it means, right? That, oh, the president was playing hardball with another country. Wow. Isn't that his job, to squeeze the best deal out of everybody else in the world? And meanwhile, the main issue that the president was trying to squeeze out of the Ukraine was to help him prove the corruption of the main Democratic candidate for president. And so everybody's now focusing on that. They're like, well, what did Trump want? Oh, Biden's son, who has no experience at all in the energy sector, got a $60,000 a month job with a Ukrainian oil company when Biden was the point man on Ukrainian policy for the Obama administration.
That's not a conflict, is it?
Yeah,
not
there's
conflict of interest,
that's
right?
not corruption.
No,
that's just a guy going out and making something of his life. You know?
Hey, he turned his life around. John, he was in rehab, and he turned it around. He got this job for $83,000 a month, And what's wrong with that? So it's America's the land of second chances, right?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Financial Survival Network is brought to you today by Oren Resources, a junior exploration company with the appetite of a major. It's hot on the trail of the next globally significant discovery, creating enormous potential upside for you, the shareholder. Oren is one of the most aggressive exploration companies pursuing high-grade, scalable gold and copper deposits, and has a premier 7-project portfolio, including its 2 flagships, Committee Bay in the Arctic and Sombrero in Peru. Oren's unparalleled technical team and highly experienced management has a history of success in advancing and monetizing exploration assets. No wonder Oren's been called one of the best in the junior exploration sector. Oren trades on the TSX and the NYSE under AUG. To learn more, go to orenresources.com. That's AURYN resources.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And so that's the second sad part, that it keeps Biden's corruption in the news when they probably could have hidden it otherwise. And the third is that it hands the Republicans this really interesting electoral scam, if you want to call it that, where apparently they're discussing having the Senate start impeachment hearings too, that would run through the end of the year, which would pin down Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in Washington and keep them from being able to campaign during the really crucial early.
You know what Confucius said, don't you? Make sure you know what you want because you just might get it. And these people are morons here.
Oh my God! It's so sad to watch because you don't want the main people running the country to be morons, right? That's not a good thing.
They are.
But they are morons. Yeah.
Yes.
And really see that how this could work out is Biden is not a senator, so he wouldn't be pinned down. So he could actively campaign, which would give him a bit of an advantage over Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who are much tougher candidates for Trump, right? He would love to run against Joe Biden.
Yeah, Joe Biden doesn't know what state he's in or who he is or who's president. And he's worried about hedge funds. He's always bloopering, always screwing everything up. I mean, the guy, if he was your son, you would lock him away.
And Trump would just be relentless. He'd be like, "Hey, how's your son doing, Joe? How is he spending all that money? I hope he's having fun with it." And you remember your son, right? Because he will pick on Biden's memory as well as his corruption.
Yeah.
And it'll just be brutal, And I'm looking forward to Trump versus Bernie Sanders, which is that's like the New England Patriots versus the Golden State Warriors or something like that. That will be an excellent campaign because Bernie Sanders will not back down and he'll go right at Trump. So this will be a slugfest, that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah,
Not that
Bernie,
I want Bernie Sanders to win or anything, or Trump. I don't know. I really don't have a dog, but it would just be fun to watch. Yeah.
You don't have a dog in this one, but the point is that Bernie, he's he's consistently a commie. Let's face it, but he doesn't have any solutions that will ever work. And not that Trump does necessarily, but at least Trump is doing stuff, trying to do stuff. It's probably too late, probably isn't going to matter, but at least he's cutting back regulations and trying to, take on the deep state and force them out.
Yeah. And he's keeping us out of wars.
Yeah.
I got to say that on most of the big issues, I find myself liking Trump's attitude, and that's a big deal. That's not nothing with a president.
He's not too good on debt, but, I don't think I think you got to prioritize. I mean, he's got all these people in the government working against him, John. They come out and admit that they're working against him, and somehow that's okay. But can you imagine if people were working against Obama the way they're working against Trump? I mean, it would just be unforgivable. It would be a real, that person would be eviscerated for that. They would just.
Well, that's one more good thing about Trump's 4 years, which is that it's kind of laid bare the deep state.
Yes.
That was a mythical concept before Trump came along.
We always knew it. We always knew it was there. You and I both knew it, but
what was it? Nobody really understood the concept very much, and in any event, it was impervious to examination.
Mm-hmm.
But now he kind of forced it out of the shadows. So these guys can't do their things secretly anymore and succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So they're having to just, they're putting CIA agents in Trump's meetings to spy on him, and then
you couldn't make this stuff up, John.
No, and they're making stuff up. The whole Russiagate thing was apparently made up by intelligence officials working with the Clinton campaign, and that whole thing. See, I think they're doing that investigation via the Justice Department right now. And I suspect they're saving it for later in the presidential campaign, where they can pull this stuff out. And say it's Biden that's running against Trump. That's another thing. Where
he was knee deep in it, Biden.
While you were the vice president in the Obama administration, they committed this crime and this crime and this crime. They committed treason. What did you know, and when did you know it, Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, were you completely left out of the loop? As the most powerful vice president, didn't they tell you anything about it? It would be brutal. I don't want Biden to run because I'm going to feel too sorry for him, I think.
Yeah, well, you kind of like you feel sorry for, an elephant in the zoo,
Well, it's going to be abuse, elder abuse in this case. But
yeah, it's really elder abuse. I mean, I feel bad for him because he shouldn't be there. That's what it comes down to. He really should not be running.
I mean, he's definitely qualified based on his life. It's just that he doesn't have a whole lot of philosophical ideas. Other than
that he remembers.
Let's just stay the course, and he doesn't seem to be handling it physically. And that's always an issue when we got all these old people running now.
Yeah,
where Bernie Sanders has a heart attack and Joe Biden can't remember things. And, it's that's another aspect to modern politics that I think is really interesting. What happened to the John F. Kennedys, where the argument was, well, is he even old enough to run?
I think Obama was youthful. Obama
was very classy. He was somebody I liked to watch because he was so good at what he did.
Yeah, he wrote a mean
leaving his policies aside, without having to.
He read a mean teleprompter. The guy could not go off the prompter for a nanosecond, or he was lost here.
But I saw some interviews with him where I just thought he was great.
They were planted questions.
Real guy. Yeah. Well,
they were
maybe he was prompted ahead of time and everything. But the Barack Obama, the politician, was an awful lot like Bill Clinton, the politician. Bill Clinton was also a natural, and he was fun to watch. If you didn't try to dig into the subtext of what he was saying, don't think about what he's really saying, because that'll just make you mad. But just watch his body language and listen to his voice. It was a really nice performance. And Obama was like that too. The Democrats have more people like that. They run people who are very good politicians, whereas the Republicans run people who are absolutely not politicians in a lot of cases because they don't respect government. If you're a Republican and you want to be the biggest thing you can be, you become a CEO, right, of a company and a billionaire. You don't go run the government, because the government is support staff to the
it's a dead weight
to the private sector. And so that would be like wanting to be the head janitor in your office building or something like that.
That's like wanting to be
Republicans.
Wanting to be the head vampire squid of the school of vampire squids. It's anathema. Republicans generally don't respect government. They view it as an impediment because they, not all of them, because there's plenty of these whatever the heck they are, rhinos, but generally they view, like Reagan, as government is the problem, not the answer, right?
The thing is, Reagan was sort of in the class of Obama and Clinton in terms of political skill, though. That guy was beautiful, and he was another one where he really needed to know what his speech was. He needed a teleprompter. You don't want to get him off topic or anything, but when he was doing his thing, he was moving, and you listen to him, and it was just so inspiring, and the voice inflection was perfect, and the body language was perfect. And that's why Republicans always look back on Reagan with nostalgia, because he was anti-government, but a great politician. And that's very rare for Republicans.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, when he looked into the camera, he was looking into your heart. And it was just, no one had been able to do that up to him. That's what made it so special. Yeah. And he was a person of integrity, I think, and a genuinely good person. And you can't say that about who we've had recently, that's for sure. But anyways,
you don't necessarily want your president to be a good person, because you kind of have to be corrupted by the time you get that high up.
You know what? You want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs.
Yeah, and you want them to be bloodthirsty when they need to be, right?
Yeah.
So you need somebody who's got kind of a range of potential ways of being in the world. Mm-hmm. And by definition, that means they're not all good. And they're capable of doing the really hard thing, even if it seems kind of brutal.
Like Giuliani.
So that's not something that's not a person you can judge as you judge your friends or your family. Right?
Like Giuliani was like that. He was a real SOB to work for, constantly screaming at people. But you know what? The city came into its own. It blossomed under his iron fist. And that's what you need to remember. Nice bosses are usually the worst bosses. And that doesn't mean that a guy who's an SOB is going to be a good boss. He's got to have a vision. He's got to have talent and the ability to get things done. And speaking of the ability to get things done, that is it for us. Make sure you send John an email and myself where you think all this civil unrest is heading. KL@KerryLutz.com, Twitter feed @KerryLutz. Facebook page is Financial Survival Network, as is the site financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Visit John's site, which is dollarcollapse.com. Sign up for both our newsletters. We just sent one out 5 minutes ago. John, we'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Gary. See ya.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.